All right, this is very interesting yesterday. Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh put out an open letter to the college football community calling for college football players to have the ability to enter the NFL draft whenever they're ready, as opposed to the 3-year rule that currently exists, and to allow players who go unselected in the draft to return to school. We'll make some of this required reading. This is a part of the letter. He wrote, "There are early bloomers capable of competing in the NFL and earning a livelihood at an earlier age. The goal would be to create a scenario that makes adjustments for all current and future student athletes that puts the timeline for transition to professional football at their discretion and that of their family." So we have got Laura Rutledge and John Vilma with Mike Tannenbaum here to break this down. And so, Laura, there's really two pieces to that. There's the idea of letting the players go early, which is one thing. But then the idea of letting them come back to school if it doesn't work out might be the most important part of this.
Yeah, and Greeny, for a long time, I've heard many college football coaches talk about wanting that to be a reality, saying that sometimes guys get bad advice or things happen in the lead up to the draft or even during the draft that change their situation. And so if they are undrafted, they should get a chance to go back to school, continue to work on their craft. The interesting thing about all of that is, what does it do to scholarships? And in talking to a college football coach yesterday, he brought that up. How do you handle that with an incoming recruiting class and trying to make sure that your numbers are aligned? That becomes complicated, but either way, that part of Harbaugh's proposal has been floating around for a while. A lot of people in favor of that. Another thing in all of this that I think is really important for all of us to look at is this does eliminate the double standard that is in place a lot of times in college football. So often we talk about, well, that coach just got to up and leave and he's making all this money and all of that, and he's got control of what he's doing, and these football players don't have control. Well, this gives them much more control, but as we all know, that factors in for the top tier players, and there's a trickle-down effect that can sometimes be very detrimental to those guys that might not benefit from this. So that's key. Another thing that I thought of that I think is really important here, imagine if Tua Tagovailoa was somebody who was eligible to go to the draft when he was ready, which some would have argued would have been a couple of years ago. He, Greeny, would not have been injured probably, at least not at the college level, and wouldn't have suffered the injuries that did ultimately affect him and probably affected his chance to be the #1 overall pick. So it's fascinating to think about how history could be changed even at this point if this rule was already in place.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence might already be in the NFL if the circumstances were there. John Vilma, as a former player, what do you think of it all?
I like the first part of what Jim Harbaugh said. I like that the players should be able to go and they should capitalize on their success early on. You just mentioned Trevor Lawrence. He was the hottest thing since sliced bread after he won the national title, possibly, arguably, a #1 pick at the time. So, yes, he should go and capitalize on that because he would be making some money right now and still performing and playing football. The second part, though, I don't agree with at all. This is the part where they're allowed to come back if they don't get drafted. Look, there is a process that the college players are allowed to go through to see and test the waters if they are NFL ready. And they can go right before they do anything illegal that permits them from playing college football another year. They can actually fill out a report, send it into the NFL, and the NFL will scout them, watch the film, and let them know, hey, you are going to be, if you leave early, you are going to be a first-round pick, a mid-round pick, a late-round pick. They'll tell you your pros. They'll tell you your cons. They'll tell you what you need to work on for the next season if you choose to stay. So if you have this ability to go and get the free report from the NFL, they give it to you, send it back, and they give you the feedback. Now it's up to you. This is now a grown man's decision to decide if you're going to leave or stay, and you should not have that kind of do-over card where it's like, oh, well, I left. I ignored everybody, frankly, because the report probably said that you're going to be a mid to late round pick. I ignored everyone. And because I ignored everyone, I'm going to now take up a scholarship of an incoming freshman that has the potential to be better than whatever I am at the time. No, I don't agree with that at all. If you leave, you leave. That's it.
That analysis that you're talking about, John, is done by a committee of people around the National Football League. And Mike Tannenbaum, you were on that committee. Tell us how that works.
Yeah, and I agree with John in part and disagree in others because he's right. There's evaluations, there's reports written, but there's two things that we don't know when those reports are written. One are the intangibles. We don't have time to go back and look at talk to the support staff, find out about character, selflessness, ability to learn, and also, very importantly, medical. And here's a great example. Tyler Biadasz, the very talented center from Wisconsin, he comes out early, some medical issues that were out there about him. He drops to the 4th round. He's a first-round talent. He may start for the Cowboys. Then there's another set of examples. Jacob Fromm, he comes out, great background. He drops all the way down to the 5th round. He'd be obviously benefit by going back. So those two mechanisms about the two factors of not having the intangibles and the medical are hugely different in April than they are in January. And then again, there's the Jacob Fromms of the world that when they fall, if they have a chance to go back and develop for another year, they would benefit from that.
Laura, I got like 20 seconds here, but the rule wouldn't necessarily have to be that the school that the player was at has to take the player back, right? The player could just have eligibility, it seems to me, and if another school wants him, they can have him.
And that's why this is so fascinating to these college football coaches. In the world of the transfer portal, they're going to try to say, how can we get as much talent at our university as possible? And that's one thing that this would do. Of course, it creates a Pandora's box ripple effect that we can all agree would open up a lot of eyeballs.
Boy, there's so much there. I'd leave it to Jim Harbaugh to bring this up at all times right now. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.